Today, we'll be learning how to create a reverse self-portrait. Now, you have already traced your photograph, but we need to learn how to mix our skin colors using our primary colors, white and black. And remember, our primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. To get started, you want to take your transparency film and flip it around to the white on the back side of your photograph. This is going to be the back of your work. We want to make sure that your name is on the back, just in case we want to take your tape off so we can be able to see our colors. I'm going to start with my skin color, and we need to learn how to mix that. So you'll have your ice cube tray that has your primary colors in it. Then you'll also need to get a paint palette. You are not allowed to mix the paint in the ice cube tray. You're only going to be mixing in your paint palette. So to get started, I'm going to get a nice scoop of white. Everyone should get a scoop of white, and then a dot of red and a dot of yellow, and mix that in. I didn't get quite enough dots, but you don't want to get too much color because your colors will take over very quickly. If your skin is a little bit darker, I would recommend adding a dot of blue. But blue is a super powerful paint color, so you don't want to add too much or you'll end up green or purple. I would recommend just getting small dots and adding them in until your color in your palette matches the back of your hand. If you're going to touch the black paint, I would get a very, 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 very tiny dot of paint. So a little bit of red, a little bit of yellow. Depending on the complexion of your skin, you can add more white or less white, maybe a dot of blue, and mix that up in your palette. Your skin color may go over to the other one next to it, but it doesn't need to take up your whole palette. You could take up one or two sections, but not the whole thing. Finding your skin color might take most of the class. If it's quicker than that, that's fine, but if it takes you a while, that's okay too. I'm looking at my photograph to try to match it, and I'm also trying to match it from the back of my hand. If it's easier for you, you may very carefully untape your photograph from your transparency so you can see. But you want to make sure you're only painting on the back of your transparency, not on the front. Once you find your skin color, you can begin painting. We want to make sure that our paint is what's called opaque, not translucent. And those big words mean that we want it to be able to be nice and thick and not see-through. The problem with this kind of paint is if we make it too thick, it'll get flaky and it'll crack. So we might have to do a few layers of this. So grab a smaller brush and start painting your skin color. Since we're painting the back of our transparency, then what our viewer is going to see is the first layer we put down through the front. So you want to make sure that you're not getting paint in your eyes or in your eyebrows or in your hair or on your lips. You just want to get like your face, your neck, your arms, your ears, and paint all your skin color. If you run out of color, you'll have to mix some more up, so pay close attention to how you made your color. Now that I'm done my skin color, I'm going to move on to my lips. So I keep flipping back and forth to see the color of my lips. You can detach your work if you need to. Remember I said that your viewer is going to see the first thing you lay down first. So I'm going to look at the lightest shade of pink in my lips first because I want that in front. When you start looking at your smaller details, it really is easier to look at your photograph to get your colors correct. So if you need to detach, just make sure you're writing your name away from your face on your transparency so we can still see it. Now to mix your lip color, I would take your palette and get a little bit of your skin color that you already mixed up, put it in a new little section, and then add the teeniest, tiniest bit of red very slowly until you get your correct color in your palette. Like I said, I'll be mixing the lightest highlight on my lip first, and then painting over it until I get my actual shade of my lip color. You don't want to make it bright red because that's not realistic unless you're wearing lipstick. So make sure you're really going nice and slow to try to match that color exactly. What's nice about our tempera paint is that it dries really fast. So if you need to put layers on top of things, just wait a few minutes for it to dry and then you can go on top. So once I have my highlight for my lip mixed, I'm going to lay that down. And then I'll mix up a shade of my lip color that's a little bit darker and put that on top. Now the viewer will see my light highlight of my lip first and then the color that goes behind it. What's also really cool about our tempera paint, especially on transparencies, is that since it dries so fast, you can scrape it right away. So I know we couldn't erase our Sharpie while we were tracing, but we can erase our paint. So if you go over a line or if you made a mistake and you don't like the color you made after it dries, just use your fingernail to very gently scrape that off. You might notice that every once in a while I'm picking up my transparency and flipping it. That way I can look at it from the viewer's perspective. The back is just going to get a little bit wonky as we keep working. It's going to look a little bit messy and silly, sometimes pretty weird. So if you're checking the front, you're able to see what your artwork really looks like. As I'm layering, you might notice that instead of wiping my brush the way I would normally, I'm just tapping. The thing about layering with our paint is that if it's a little bit too wet, it might all smear together. So I'm just going nice and slow to make sure I'm tapping that color on so that everything stays where it needs to. Once your lips are finished, I'm going to move on to my eyebrows. And to create a brown, I'm just going to do a dot of red, a dot of blue, and a dot of yellow in a new spot on my palette. My eyebrows are a little bit brownish, so a little bit of each is going to work for your eyebrows. Just go nice and slow, and just like your skin color, just keep adding small dots of your other colors until you think that it matches your eyebrows. Remember that we're trying to create a realistic look, so really take your time until you think that it works for your color. If you start to mix a color and it looks gray, you could add a warmer color to fix that. And your warmer colors, remember, are going to be red and yellow. So I added some more red and yellow and a tiny dot of blue to help make that brown again, warm it up. This is a big trial and error. It might not work for the first time for you. I got a super gray color and my eyebrows are not gray. So just play around, take your time, and remember that we're all learning this process together. Remember I said that we need this painting to be opaque, which means you can't see through it. But at the same time, we don't want it to be so thick that it gets clumpy and it starts to crack and flake off. So make sure that if you're looking from the front, you can't see your work. If you can, that's okay. Go back in, dab some more paint on there, and keep working. I also realized that when I checked the front, I could see through my skin. Once I checked that my skin was completely dry, I'm going to have to mix up some new color to go on top because we shouldn't be able to see through our self-portraits because we're going to be creating a background behind them and it will get super distracting to our viewer. I mixed up a paint color that matched my skin and I'm just going to fill myself right back in where my skin was before. Once I added a new layer to my skin, I was ready to work on my eyes. So I have like a hazily eyes, so they're like brown and green. I'm going to make up a little bit of a green, add some of that brownish color that I used for my eyebrows, and I'm just going to fill in the iris of my eye. The iris is the color part of your eye, and if your picture's a little too dark and you can't see, you could open up your camera on your Chromebook to double check, or if you know your eye color. So just play around until you get that, and make sure you're only doing the iris. We can go over the pupil part later with a thin Sharpie. Don't worry about filling that in because you might make it a little bit too dark so it'll look a little silly, but we can just work on the color part. Once you do the color part, we want to get some pure white to fill in around your iris. So that part is going to be super white, so make sure you grab some fresh white, fill that in around your iris, but your iris is the color part. You're going to fill that all the way in until your eyes are complete. If you smiled with your teeth, I told you not to trace that with a Sharpie. So while you have that pure white out, you can just paint the inside of your mouth pure white so it'll match your teeth. I promise it'll look totally fine if you don't have your teeth outlined and it's just white. If you have a closed mouth smile or a mask on though, then you don't have to worry about this step. As my paint kept drying, I once again realized I needed to go in and touch up some parts of my skin. So if you see yourself getting see-through, just add another thin layer on top of everything until you're ready to go again. So now I'm ready for my hair, and as you guys know, my hair is kind of weird, and sometimes it's a lot of different colors, and in the day I took my picture, it was a little bit silver, and a little bit blonde, and a little bit brown. So your hair is going to be a lot easier than my hair was to get done. But you do want to remember that if you have different values, so lights and darks in your hair, you want to consider painting them in where you see them. And remember that the first layer of paint that you lay down on your page is going to be the first thing that that viewer sees. So I went in and did my darks first, and then I'm going to go through a lot of different layers of some browns, some blondes, a little bit of silver until I have what I think looks okay for my hair. I probably could have done a little bit better, but like I said, my hair is super tricky because it's a weird amount of colors, but your hair shouldn't be nearly as time consuming as mine was. If it is, that's a-okay. Just take your time, go step by step until you get it looking the right way. Remember that you can always scrape some off or wipe some away with a paper towel. Just be really observant and super careful about the rest of the colors on your transparency as you're working. Once you get you done, you're ready for your clothes or your mask or your accessories. So I have on a striped shirt and I didn't trace my stripes, so I am going to choose whatever color I want to do my shirt in. I also painted my earring when I was working on my hair, so if you guys have accessories, you can get to them now. I'm going to do like a purpley pinkish color for my shirt. You guys can make your clothes whatever you want them to look like. If you want them to look realistic, like the day you wore it in that picture, that's fine. If you have words and graphics on your shirt or your mask that you want to replicate, you can do that. If you want to change it, that's totally fine. No one is going to compare your artwork to your photograph to tell you that it's not real. So your clothes you can make look however you'd like. Just keep in mind that we want to make sure they're opaque and not transparent while you're working. I also got to a point where I realized I forgot my arms, and if you forget any part, again, it's okay. We know how to mix our skin color now, so mix that up. I did my arms, and I went all the way to the edge. We can trim that later, so if you have places where your Sharpie tracing line stopped, when we go to put all this together in a few weeks, I can put it on the cutting board, and I can cut it down for you so it goes exactly to your lines that you traced your photograph with. Once you're done everything, then you can put your work on the drying rack. Just set it on top of your photo so we don't lose it. I also want you to keep in mind that this video went really fast. I sped it up like 1,000 times in certain spots of what I was really working at. The very beginning, I was exactly at my pace, but towards the end, we went pretty quick. So keep that in mind while you're working, that this is not expected to happen in one day. We might only even find our skin color in the first class. So please take your time and really try to make this look like your best work that you can.